again, Year 10. So today we're continuing with our revision of the Love and Relationships Poetry Anthology. These lessons will seem a little bit repetitive, but that's kind of the easiest way to revise poetry. So obviously if you want to do things in a different way, so if you don't want to use a mind map, if you want to do a poster on a poem, or you want to do lists on poems, that's absolutely fine by me. Just wanted to let you know that obviously they might seem a little bit repetitive just this week on the information that I'm giving you. So do now, which quotation from When We Two Parted did we discuss last lesson? Which quotation from Neutral Tones did we discuss last lesson? And how are these two poems similar in terms of their structure? 5 minutes, have a go. Okay, so we're moving on this lesson. So I would like you to mind map, list, do a character profile, whatever you want to do, on Percy Shelley. So what can you remember about Percy Shelley? And can you tell me the name of the poem that was written by this poet, please? Thank you very much. Give yourself 10 minutes. Okay, so you should have that Percy Shelley wrote Love's Philosophy. Okay, and the important information to remember. So this was written during a patriarchal society, so women were expected to obey men. Women were expected to preserve their virginity until marriage, and this is the thing that Percy Shelley couldn't get his head around. So he's frustrated that his lover will not show him any physical contact, and this is when he uses the physical world as an example of how intimate humans should be. So make sure you've got that information on your mind map for me. So we're using those inference skills again. So how does this picture relate to a quotation from the poem, and can you explode that quotation for me? Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to have a go at that. So the specific quotation that I was looking for was this one here. The mountains kiss the high heaven. That's the one that my image shows. However, we did also look at this quotation, the fountains mingle with the river, and they're both pretty similar in the fact that they're natural imagery and personification. So either of those is acceptable. So Shelley personifies nature in this poem to show his lover that the natural world is physically intimate and in harmony with each other, so him and his lover should be too. He's desperate for physical contact. So he says that God allows nature to do it every single day, so it's absolutely fine for them to do it because God is basically saying that it's fine. Okay? And the verbs mingle and kiss show how passionate and intertwined nature is, and he's using this to try and persuade his lover that they should be too. So he's saying that the mountains kiss all the time, so why shouldn't they? Okay, it's very persuasive, obviously. So this one's a little bit more tricky, I have to say. So how does this picture relate to the structure of this poem? More specifically form than structure, but how does it relate to the form of Percy Shelley's Love's Philosophy, please? So it might have been a long stretch, but I was going for the repetition, regularity of the posts related to the regular ABAB rhyme scheme. Not sure whether you got that, but that was where I was thinking. Okay, so obviously the idea is that it has a regular rhyme scheme, so it reflects how regularly Shelley desires his loved one. We have also talked about this use of half rhymes, so river and ever, that shows that they're not quite in harmony with one another, and obviously that they don't fit together neatly, so maybe that's how him and his lover are in terms of their compatibility. In terms of structure, you could also talk about the fact that each stanza ends with a short monosyllabic line that sounds quite harsh. It helps to portray his frustration and desperation, but also kind of his short-tempered manner in speaking to his lover, which might suggest that the relationship obviously isn't as romantic as he might like. So that is Love's Philosophy. Make sure you've put some notes down on it, make sure you've got some sort of revision resource for it, and then we're going to move on to the next one. Okay then, so we're moving on to Elizabeth Barrett Browning now. So mind map as much as you can remember about this lovely young woman, and also can you remember the title of the poem that we have studied from her collection? Again, give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to really have a think about this before moving on to the next slide. Okay then, so you should have had Sonnet 29, which is the title of the poem written by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, okay? And the important things that you need to remember about the context of this poem is that women were forced to marry whoever their fathers chose. So we didn't get a choice in who we wanted to marry, it was whoever our fathers picked. And Elizabeth fell in love with Robert Browning, but her father really did not approve of him. So they began a secret relationship, sending letters to each other. So this sonnet is one of the poems she wrote to him to express her overwhelming desire for him. Okay, so basically they weren't allowed to be together because they were different social classes. Her father did not approve of him, and therefore their relationship was not supported. They did, however, run off and get married afterwards, obviously, but this poem is specifically written during the time where they were, you know, not allowed to see each other. But, you know, happy ending and all of that. Okay then, so again, inference. How does this image link to one of the quotations that we have studied from this poem, and can you explode it and tell me what it shows about Elizabeth Barrett Browning's feelings towards Robert Browning? Okay then, so you should have picked out the quotation, "My thoughts due to wine and bud, as wild vines about a tree." So we spoke quite a lot about this, so obviously this is just a quick go over. So it's a simile, and it highlights how out of control her feelings are. She compares her thoughts about Robert to wild vines, showing how without seeing him she's going crazy. The adjective wild could possibly hint at her sexual feelings for him. She is desperate for passionate physical contact, because obviously they weren't able to have that. Okay then, so using your inference skills for one final time this lesson, how does this image relate to the structure of Sonnet 29, please? Okay, so the image relates to this poem because it is a Petrarchan sonnet, and you all know from our wonderful poetry lessons that Petrarchan sonnets are love poems, okay? So you'll know that obviously this is a type of sonnet where the first octave, 8 lines, present a problem, so she can't physically be with him. The volta is the turning point. It usually happens on line 8. However, it comes at line 7 in this because she's so impatient and she's desperate. She's desperate for a solution and a way to be able to see Robert. Okay, so usually we'd have the octave and their sestet separated by the volta. The octave being 8 lines on line 9, the volta come in, and then the sestet, the problem being solved at the end. But in this, we've got obviously the octave up until line 6, line 7 is the volta, and the rest is about them solving the issue. So she's so impatient, she's got to see him now. This is where the change occurs in the structure. So we've looked at 2 poems today. We've looked at Love's Philosophy and Sonnet 29. So what I'd like you to think about now is how could you compare these 2 poems? So why have I decided to teach these 2 together as a clump today?